Where to start is always an issue with me. I've been around a long time. I'm 74. Wouldn't go back a day. The best is yet to come. Uh, I kiddingly say sometimes I think I'm going to shoot for 130. I decided when I hit 65 that I was beginning halftime. Halftime ended up being for 5 years, from 65 to 70. And during those 5 years, I dealt with, I call them my three shuns. I dealt with reflection, looking in the past. Then I dealt with introspection. Who am I really? What am I doing? And what in the world is going on in my life? And then thirdly, my projection as to what I want the next half of my life to be like. So that's kind of the fun I have. I picked up a clipping in the paper the other day, and here's a new book that's just come out. It's called What Do You Want to Do Before You Die? And it's written by four young men in their 20s, writing books all over. Can you believe that? And I kind of like these books written by young people. I have another book written by Alex and Brett Harris, no kin to me, called Do the Hard Things. Both of those young men, twin brothers, are teenagers. But they're teenagers that wrote a whole book about the fact that teenagers shouldn't let society define them. That society should not have such low expectations for America's teenagers. They said, teenagers, if you do not try it, it cannot work. Come up with some bold dreams and bold ideas and try them. All you can do is fail, and if you fail, you just bounce right back. And the book is full of case studies of teenagers that have done bold things. I remember one 13-year-old girl had a heart for an orphanage in Kenya. And she talked after reading the book and getting to know the Harris twins. She started a fund. Next thing you know, she's raised over $250,000. And today there's an orphanage in some part of Kenya that was funded because of the dreams and aspirations and the drive of a young 13, 14-year-old young lady. So that's a book that I wish all young people could read. I'm a reader. You know, I'm concerned with what's going on in the newspaper business, which is why I've referred to myself in the past as a sarvangelist. But recent studies have shown that people that, quote, get their news online average about 3.5 minutes of getting their news online. People that subscribe to newspapers average 45 minutes. So the concern that's out there is that we could be heading into generations where you have a lot of people that know a little bit about a lot of things, but they don't know a whole lot about anything because of the lack of more in-depth reading, which of course I get from print journalism, as well as the magazines that I subscribe to. So there's concern out there. There's concern about our interpersonal skills. When everybody's texting and doing all this wired stuff that so many people do, in which I have family that does a lot of it, I do a little of it, you know. But when you get to where you don't read, then pretty soon you get to where you don't talk. And that's part of why I'm busily dissecting the whole STEM program. I love the STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math. But I have been at graduation ceremonies with high school kids that have graduated from the STEM program, and they're brilliant prospective scientists. But they can't fashion together a complete paragraph. They don't understand grammar. They don't understand presentation skills. So increasingly, I hope we see STEM++. And that will be exciting for young people to be able to articulate this new knowledge that they've gleaned from the sciences. Everywhere I go, I try to be a blotter. I try to soak up the best I can find everywhere I go. I have Condoleezza Rice's book. She's one of my role models. I heard her speak in Dallas along with former Secretary of State Jim Baker. Then I raced down to Waco and sat on the front row in the Waco Hall while she spoke for the next hour and a half along with the president of Baylor, Dr. Ken Starr. It was a wonderful hour and a half. She is so brilliant and such a wonderful role model for anybody that wants to study a bright, brilliant young lady who's not only a gifted pianist, but is brilliant when it comes to world policy. And I would recommend, if you're not a student of Condoleezza Rice, that you become one. I was coming out of the UT Southwest, saw a big sign, told me about Peter Johnson being the keynote speaker that afternoon at UT Southwest for the annual Martin Luther King Award ceremony for the Employee of the Year. I said, you know, there's no reason I don't come back to that. So I came back to that. And that's where I met Peter Johnson. And what an experience that was. He's from Plaquemine, Louisiana. And he's got that Cajun talk. And he's got a great sense of humor. He's been savagely beaten 14 times. 2 of those times put him into a coma. He's been arrested 44 times. I said, that's a strange background. He said, well, that's what happens. Occupational hazard. I work for Dr. Martin Luther King. He was the youngest member of the staff. And I think he said Andrew Young, our former ambassador to the UN, I think he said that Andy Young fired him about every 6 months. But he could always come back around and see Coretta King, and she would plead his case. Now, Andy, he's just a kid. He's just a kid. Anyway, I've learned so much in the last 3 years from Peter Johnson. I had the experience of asking Peter if he had ever been to the LBJ Ranch. He said no. I said, every August 27th, we have a wreath-laying ceremony at LBJ's gravesite. I would love for you to come. He said, I'd love to come. So we drove down there. And what an experience that was. After the ceremony at the graveside, we went through the White House, and then we went to the hangar, which is enclosed. It's air-conditioned. It has a speaker's platform. Has a beautiful interactive display. It has actual footage of President Johnson and Dr. King and Whitney Young and some of the great civil rights leaders from way back in the 60s. And it's just a wonderful experience. And we saw all that. And then behind the hangar, there's now an outdoor protective awning over the smallest Air Force One I've ever seen. It's a Lockheed Lodestar that was configured to only seat 13 people. And the pilot of Air Force One was at the podium, and he spoke, and we had a book signing, and we all got to meet and visit with him, and that was a hoot. I leaned up, came up behind Lucy Baines Johnson, and I said, Lucy, this is my friend Peter Johnson. And I told her that same history I mentioned a minute ago. I said, but all that aside, he wanted to come because he loved your mama. I said, he proceeded to tell me about, he knew it was your mother's sensitivity about black Texans because she came from Karnak. Her daddy owned the general store, and he extended credit to the black families in East Texas. So he was letting her know how much he loved the sensitivity that Lady Bird used to help LBJ understand the plight, the perils, and the impoverishment that comes with being black in Texas way back then. I took a sequence of pictures once I got them started talking, and with the first picture, she just has a smile on her face, a typical political smile. The next picture, the smile is not quite as broad as it was. Her face is growing more intense. And then the third picture, she nearly loses it and nearly weeps when he realizes how strongly Peter Johnson felt about her mother. It was a rich, rich, rich experience. And then the one that I had a hard time with was she reached up and put her hand on. I said, Peter, I said, that picture makes me so mad. I said, I've known her for a long, long time, and she's never put her hand on my face. I said, I feel discriminated against. And he died laughing over that. But it has been a rich experience. And we're following up, and we took 32 people there this last August, and that was a wonderful experience. In this particular trip, we took a wonderful bus, a motor coach, and the audience was about half Hispanic and African American. It was a wonderful group, and it was a thrill to be a part of that. And next time, I'll take you into what it's like to work for the richest man in America. That's another part of my strange odyssey of a life. Appreciate you. Love you. God bless.